Hello and welcome to this video on the EP-133, a product made by Teenage Engineering known as the Knockout 2. This is a fascinating device, and there's a lot of really cool engineering concepts that we can review by getting to know how this machine works. So let's go ahead and take a look. This device does many things, but a few notable are it's a sampler, which allows us to record audio files and play them back. It's a sequencer, which allows for time-based playbacks of those recordings and pre-recorded items that it comes with. And it's also a signal processor. So it does a lot of digital signal processing, so we can add effects and do modifications to the audio that we have access to. There are three main modes to the Knockout. It has sound, main, and tempo. Sound lets us select samples and modify them. Main lets us arrange the samples, and tempo lets us play with the timing. We're going to first focus on the sound mode. The pads get assigned samples, and we can organize those samples into groups. The manufacturer recommends we group them by A, B, C, and D, drums, bass, melody, and user samples respectively. As noted in the text on the device, it has 64 megabytes worth of memory, and we access the memory bank through these keys and assigning it to the groups. The sample or audio files are labeled by a number. For example, this current sample is 519. A really neat submode of the sound is the keys. It allows us to pitch shift a sample. So this means we can play the samples back chromatically. For example, if an instrument's sampled, such as a piano, you can map the pads in a way where these keypads correlate to the keys. So you have all the notes, all the white keys and the black keys. And you can play this device as if you were playing a keyboard or the instrument that you've sampled. In fact, you can use a MIDI controller which uses the MIDI musical protocol to interface with this device. For the purpose of this video, we'll stick to just using this unit. So I exited key mode, and now I can review the samples assigned to the melodic group. And you can navigate and actually reassign a pad with the plus and minus key, which lets us access our sample memory bank. This is great for standalone play, or you can add melodies over a beat, or just loop it within itself. But let's go ahead and take a look at how we can create more rhythm. So we'll program the A group, the drums. I think it's first useful to take a look at how we use the timing features of the Knockout. The segment displays the bar, beat, and step respectively. This example rhythm is 1 bar. Per bar is 4 beats, and there's 3 steps within that beat. If you're familiar with musical counting, that would be 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda. In other words, it's triplets. I use my oscilloscope, which is a measurement tool, to see what this waveform looks like. For it to be easier to see, I only have on the screen presently the first 3 beats, and I mapped out the segment display count. Because the utility of the sequencer in this Knockout is that we can program these beats, particularly when we're in the quantize mode, and that's noted by the Q highlighted on the display. So that locks us in to these timing slots, and we can program samples based upon these slots. You can either play the sample as it is in time, or you can step through the sequence with the plus and minus keys. And here's a demonstration of stepping through the sequence with the keys. And let's take a moment to look closer at these waveforms. We have the bass drum kick, the open hi-hat, and the closed hi-hat. Here we'll take a closer look at the open hi-hat. It's interesting that to create this sound, you use more of a compressed higher frequency sounds. And one general observation is to make is they're kind of sharp. You can also see that the close hi-hat is superimposed over that one as well. It's a little easier to see that within the bass drum kick. The drums are kind of funny because the bass drum is obviously lower and the cymbals are much higher frequencies. If I were to guess, this kick drum was probably made up of a mixture of a square wave and a sine wave. You can see how it dips. Also, this is a great way to see the different frequency components of the drums. So you see here the bass is slow moving, and here is the cymbal superimposed upon that bass drum kick, and that's the close hi-hat. And it has much higher frequency sounds. That's why the wave moves up and down a lot quicker relative to the slower moving bass. So up to this point, we've only looked at samples that have come with the unit, but this also comes with a built-in microphone. We can use the sampler to use that. This is a test of the microphone. As you see, you hold the sample button and the pad, and now it's assigned to the sample bank, in this case 705.
This is a test of the microphone.
Here I'll use the built-in effects.
This is a test of the microphone.
The X and Y knobs, which are orange and black, allow you to vary the parameters of those effects. Now I'm going to show you how I record a loop of this. So I go into the main mode, and now I'm going to record.
This is a test of the microphone.
Here in the sequence, I just assigned that sample to 1.1.1. This recording is 2 bars, as you see as it cycles through. And you can also add the samples as it's playing. And it's nice to have the metronome in the background, and you can see that's enabled for this recording, so you can get your timing right. So there's standalone effects, and then there's these punch-in effects. I first mistimed the punch-in effect because it really just grabs a snippet of the sample and then has its own creative add to it. For these punch-in effects, you can hold multiple at the same time. And you see here the display responds pretty impressively.
This is a test of the microphone. This is a test of the microphone. This is a test of the microphone.
Next, we'll take a look at another way you can manage your samples. For example, how we just recorded one, you can go into the web browsing interface to take a look at the whole sample bank in total. So you can see all the samples that were preloaded and your user bank, which is another reason why it's probably good, as they suggest, to keep them all organized for A, B, C, and D for the drums, bass, the melody, and user samples, respectively. It's pretty neat that the web-based browsing interface responds to your touches on the pad itself, and it connects by USB-C. And you can play the notes by clicking on the user interface itself. So see here, we're clicking through the bass sounds. You can also modify samples in this interface just like you can on the knockout itself. Here you can change the sounds by making the samples shorter or longer. It also provides a great way to take a look at the waveforms. Here's the microphone recording I just took.
This is a test of the microphone.
I could have modified the input gain to amplify the signal so we'd have a little bit more to work with, but it was good enough.
To the microphone. This is a test of the microphone.
Some other features of the interface are you can drag the sample over to a pad so you can modify it that way, or you can delete or add in files manually. So when you hover over a sample, there's the X on the right side, and that would delete it. And you can also drag in waveforms, which is pretty neat. So you can record from the device itself or add a sample in. You can also download from this interface the sample you created. It also tells you how much memory it takes up. Typically samples are smaller, so you don't have long recordings which would take up a lot of memory. But it gives you the flexibility if you wanted to do so, you could shift things around to make sure you have enough space. You can also update the firmware via browser, and you do that directly from the web. Now we'll finish out the video by modifying the demo pattern from the beginning of the video. Right now I have group A selected, so I'm looking at the drum pattern. I can step through it to take a look at it. I think I can enhance the snare sound. It's pretty common that you can layer a standard snare drum hit and a clap. It adds a little bit more volume to the sound. I noted before the segment counts the bars. Well, the drum track is actually only 1 bar, whereas the melody and the bass are 2. Because the drum beat just keeps repeating and doesn't change, whereas the melody and bass can have a bar 1 part and a bar 2 part. But for your patterns, you can choose any length you want for these channels up to 99. So I'm on channel B, which is the bass, and I need to go back to the drums if I want to add in that clap. The snare hits on the 2 and the 4 of the beat, and in this case, it's quarter note increments. So I want to program 2.1 and 4.1 to get it to align with the pre-recorded snare. So here I'm just doing a test run of it live just to double check to make sure I like the sound of it. And it sounds good to me. And I can pause it and go to the beginning of the sequence. So now I'm going to add that sample to 1.2.1. And you don't have to live record again. You can just hit record in the button in the right place in the sequence to add in that effect. And there I also added it to 1.4.1. Now the last modification I want to do is try to enhance the melody. And I got a sample that I like, but I think it's a little bit too high pitched. And with the knockout you can actually shift down an octave the sample. To do this I hold down the key and then hit the minus to bring us down. You see it went from C6 to C5. Which is notation taken from the piano. So now that I got the beat in the octave I wanted, I give it a couple practices, and then I'll record it live. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you learned a little bit about this interesting device from Teenage Engineering, the EP-133 Knockout 2. And here's a final demo with all the groups recorded and some effects. Thank you again.